Professors and researchers and students, and welcome to the afternoon session, right? So I'm very pleased and honored to moderate such a kind of panel, including the Dean of the School of Arts and Humanities, Meknes, and also some other experts in the field of translation, right? They're going to talk about one of the most significant sub-themes of today's conference, which is the issues in compiling bilingual dictionary. So without much ado, let's introduce our first distinguished and outstanding speaker, Dr. Mohamed Larouz, who is the Dean of the School of Arts and Humanities at Meknes. He headed the Department of English Language Studies at University for 2 terms. And he also directs the PhD program in Applied Linguistics and chairs the research group on Applied Linguistics and Language Development. Dr. Mohamed Larouz also holds an MA in Applied Linguistics from Essex University in 1996 and has been a Fulbright School scholar to the USA twice, 2002 and 2005. And he is also the head, as I mentioned, the head of the English department, and also his fields of interest are TEFL, discourse analysis, sociolinguistics, ecolinguistics, and research methodology. So, Mr. the Dean, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Hisham Labidi. So, dear distinguished guests, Si Ahmed Lalawi, my ex-teacher, and my dear friend, Si Tawfiqullah Afkinish, who has just retired, but still young, just to correct, to rectify what... Okay. So, dear student, it's my pleasure to be with you this afternoon to talk about the, let's say, applied linguistics and lexicography, or the role, I would say, the role of applied linguistics in dictionary making, or in dictionary design, or in lexicography. I think we mean exactly the same thing, but we have different terms for the word lexicography and the dictionary making, dictionary compiling, dictionary designing, etc. So I would report on my personal experience, and I told you that this conference lies within the context of they call them funding from the Ministry of Higher Education, especially from the National Center for Research and for Technical Research and for Science and Technical Research. So we have been working on the dictionary of applied linguistics and language teaching from Arabic into from English into Arabic, and I'm going to talk about this relationship between the two. I mean, applied linguistics and lexicography, and we will answer a wide range of questions, or specifically the importance of applied linguistics in the design of general dictionaries, and what are the theoretical backgrounds or the assumptions behind the design of dictionary. What is the importance of applied linguistics in writing a educational dictionary? And this is our concern. What is the scientific value of printed dictionaries in the light of the widespread of electronic dictionaries? So I want you to retain all these questions while discussing this issue. So lexicography as an issue is an applied study of vocabulary meanings in particular language for the purpose of compiling them into a book, and this is in short what is referred to as dictionary designing process. So the lexicographer is primarily a linguist and has a specific experience in dictionary writing. He cares about the meaning of words, how they are organized, and this field is an ancient field that dates back to about 800 years BC. And we have different types, again, before we delve into the discussion about the importance of applied linguistics and dictionary making. Let me give you a brief account of the typology of dictionary that exists in the market. So we have general dictionaries, or Well, we have specific dictionaries, we have referential or descriptive dictionaries, historical dictionaries. And I think if you listen to Professor Boerdin Bouchekhi, he is concerned about the historical dictionary, etymological dictionary, loanwords dictionaries, encyclopedic dictionaries, learners dictionary, like what you have, Oxford Dictionary, Oxford Collins Dictionary. And then we have monolingual, trilingual dictionaries, bilingual, and of course we have electronic dictionaries. As you may see, we have, so of course we have paper-based dictionaries and we have electronic dictionaries. Translation, nobody would deny or would disagree about the definition of translation, the process of rendering a text from source language to the target language. And usually we talk about source, cannot talk about translation without referring to SL and TL. And you know the field of applied linguistics, it covers, and then I usually explain to my students that we can spend hours and hours defining or trying to define the term or the concept of applied linguistics. We can remain, or we can stay for, it can last for one day, just trying to remember, just for one reason, for one simple reason, is that each scholar and each researcher would try to define the term and the concept of applied linguistics from his own perspective. So all researchers in the field of applied linguistics, understood or tried to define the word or the concept of applied linguistics from different perspectives. Okay, some would say that is something that's the field that is specifically related to the field of second language acquisition. To others would say it's related to education. Others would say no. But this field goes far or further than that. So it covers a wide range of disciplines, and a lot of disciplines, interact with the field of applied linguistics. And some people will understand again that applied linguistics is something that is related to error analysis, contrastive analysis, and interlanguage and other subjects. So it is a field that evolved during the 19th, and it is usually separated from theoretical linguistics. It is an interdisciplinary field that intersects with wide range of branches of knowledge as such. And the lexicography is one branch that is involved in applied linguistics. So we can also distinguish between two types of lexicography. We have theoretical lexicography and practical lexicography. So theoretical, what I mean by theoretical is the scholarly study of semantic, orthographic, syntagmatic, paradigmatic, features of lexicon, and lexical semantics, study of the conventional word meaning. So practical lexicography, it's the art and craft of compiling and writing and editing dictionaries. What are the functions of theoretical lexicography? Look, the theoretical lexicography is concerned with the same lexical aspects, but aims to develop principles that can improve the quality of lexicography in the future. There are several functions, some of which are based. We have dictionary criticism, and dictionary criticism assess the quality of one or more dictionaries. We have dictionary history, follows the tradition and type of dictionary in a particular country or language. We have study of dictionary types, and we have, we classify with different, the typology of dictionary and classifications. We have dictionary structure, dictionary use, I think Professor Mid-Unit talked about it this morning. We have collocation, we have dictionary of prefabricated patterns of proverbs okay. And dictionary and ICT tools. So the science of lexicography involves two principles. We have lexicology and lexicography. So lexicology deals with vocabulary items of language, and it includes the study in their meanings from forms, relations between them, and change in vocabulary through time. But when you talk about lexicography, it's the art of writing a dictionary. So if lexicography means the science of words, lexicography is interested in writing words. Okay, this is the... after this introduction, now let's move to the relationship between applied linguistics and lexicography. Usually, I mean, it is divided into, I mean, the relationship between the two can be shown in three, let's say, categories, systems. So it could be inclusive or holistic relationship. It means lexicography is included in the domain, in the branch of applied linguistics. And there could be a mutual relationship. Each one feeds the other. Each one will provide information to the other. And then we have where an independent relationship. It means a lexicographer will work on his own, and an applied linguist will deal with different issues. But now, what is the importance of applied linguistics in lexicography writing process? Without knowledge of applied linguistics, that entails knowledge of micro-linguistics. It means you cannot talk about dictionary compiling if you don't have background or solid background about micro-linguistics, including phonetics, phonology, morphology, syntax, etc. But this doesn't mean that you can exclude other macro, let's say, aspects of linguistics, like social linguistics, sociolinguistics, psycholinguistics, computational linguistics, and so on and so forth. Okay, so these sciences can provide us with a real perception of lexicography. Lexicography has a direct and indirect relationship with theoretical linguistics, such as semantics. So Hans Mainz wrote a book entitled Lexicography and said, including the dictionary under the cover of linguistics is not just a normal matter, but a wide academic issue. It means you have to talk and to take into consideration that applied linguistics is not exclusive from lexicography, but it's part of it. Okay. And drawing on my personal experience as a student, a former student at Essex University, so I had two distinguished scholars who were involved in dictionary making. So we had Scofield, Philip Scofield. He was like a consultant with Collins Dictionary. وكاين واحد آخر سميتو Keith Brown. Also he is a linguist, and he is also like a, I think he's not a consultant, but somebody who is involved in the writing up of the dictionary. So you see that professors of applied linguistics were part of dictionary making, such as Collins, Oxford, and I think there is a Cambridge. So one was with Cambridge and one was with Collins. Yeah. So they're part. So why not you as future researchers and future prominent researchers in the field of applied linguistics, you could be like consultant with your background in applied linguistics. You could be consultant for dictionaries in either, especially bilingual dictionaries, but on the basis, on the grounds that you master the two languages. Okay. So lexicography cannot stand by itself without referring to research by researchers in general, theoretical and applied linguistics. So a lexicographer should also gain a lot of insights from an applied linguist. And Benko, in this respect, says that a good dictionary should have a solid knowledge material. So it's not surprising then that linguists sometimes wait for designers of dictionaries to unify the language among themselves. So this aspect of working together, like lexicographer and applied linguistics, and this is what some researchers refer to as meta-lexicography, in which case both lexicographers and applied linguists work together. Okay, each one feeds the other. Can semantics and lexicography work side by side? And does linguistics benefit from lexicography? It's a question addressed to you as a student, yes or no? Okay, so I leave this question open to you, so you reflect upon this and then we'll resume. Moreover, John Sinclair noted that in a paper entitled In Praise of the Dictionary, a dictionary is both a practical object on the bookshelf and an application of a theory of a language to the description of meaning. I hope you understand this quotation. Some semantic scholars have accused dictionary designers of not having enough basic theories of what they do, saying that dictionary designers have no theoretical foundations and that even the best dictionary designer cannot explain why they do or why they do it. And this means that they should have, solid, some background knowledge in the field of micro linguistics, if ever they want to compile a dictionary. Compiling dictionaries requires careful consideration of each of some of the following aspects. So, again, if you want to compile a dictionary, it's not because you have this solid knowledge about theoretical linguistics, descriptive linguistics, but also you should conduct what you call needs analysis, or what you call market research analysis, okay, to know your audience before you start, writing your dictionary. Identify intended users who will be using, the dictionary you're trying to compile. Okay, the level of language, non-language competencies. You should also identify the communicative functions of the dictionary. So your target population should also be, well thought in advance before you delve and you embark in dictionary making. Now, let's see some of the challenges that lexicographers face. We have the availability of electronic dictionaries as an alternative of paper dictionaries. So people now revert to electronic dictionaries because they are cheaper, they are better, they are faster, and practical. The results of research we have carried out, we have used an ad hoc analysis. It's not a scientific or formal, but an ad hoc analysis, revealed that students prefer the electronic dictionary versions instead of the printed versions. And I think this applies to you. Is this true?
Yes.
All of you revert? Yes. So what about the effort invested by dictionary writers? Okay, so normally that's a challenge for unless they revert their effort into electronic But this is what they do in fact. Okay, أنا مازال ما وصلناش داكشي. أنا مازال in the initial stages. Okay. Also, lexicography is currently governed by profitable economic interests. Okay, الاقتصاد هو تيغلب الأكاديمي. Okay, yeah. So pressure from publishers sometimes can be considered as a curse for dictionary. Yeah, you have like what we have in our project. We have to complete this project by the end of this year. Not this year, not 2001, but 2002. Inshallah, before September, we should complete and we should have finished, this. So there is a pressure on the part of the ministry and the part of the National Center for Scientific Research. We have to respect deadlines at the expense of quality. Sometimes we have to rush, and then with some of my colleagues cannot sometimes comply with the deadlines I set. Okay, tensions between sometimes dictionary designers and publishers, and the best product for the publisher is the cheapest sometimes. These are some of the challenges that the dictionary writers may face. So in recent years, lexicography was governed by science and knowledge, obsession, okay, with the free market and the global economic changes today, lexicography has been forced to cope with these transformations. It means economic, I would say just economic transformation, not political, not social. Okay. Skills that lexicographers should possess if ever they want to write a dictionary. Study, I repeat, this is just of recapitulation again. Study of general linguistics, especially theoretical and descriptive, semantics as morphemes, etc. The ability to identify the most commonly used words that the learner needs inside and outside the classroom, especially if it is intended for learners' use. Limit these words to a limited number because the learner's mind cannot bear more than his energy. You know that in French, as far as I know about French dictionary making, is that they have a specific target population. Like, for example, they make dictionaries of grammar for 11 years old, for 12, for 13 years old student, for like the junior, and then they have perhaps cadets perhaps. وتلقى ديكشنير ديال لي جونيور فيه من 10 حتى 11 عام. دونك 11 حتى 11 they know what they mean by 10 حتى 12. Right? You cannot, the vocabulary you insert and you incorporate in the dictionary must match with the, let's say, the linguistic ability of the learner, cognitive abilities and mental faculties of those students. You cannot insert whatever you like in the dictionary. Okay. Which one is better? Monolingual dictionaries, bilingual dictionaries, trilingual dictionaries? It's a question that is open to you to reflect on it.
All of them.
So, which one?
All of them.
All of them? You like them? Okay. Anyway, it's an urgent need for the lexicographer to keep up with the changes and developments in linguistics and linguists in turn to show interest in lexicography. So both of them should show interest in each other. So assumptions behind lexicography and assumptions behind linguistics. So we should look at other relationships, such as the relationship between applied linguistics and encyclopedic knowledge of general and specific vocabulary, and we have to make a clear-cut distinction sometimes between specific and general vocabulary. Also, the issue of training is also an issue. I mean, people who have not received training in dictionary writing could be a challenge, and this is the problem we face as a team, for in dictionary writing. So this question remains ever present. Do we have lexicography specialists in Morocco? Is it a standalone speciality? It's a problem. So we must move towards greater interdisciplinary cooperation. Perhaps this will have a positive impact on the future of academic institutions, dictionary publishers, and all the beneficiaries. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vadim, for this insightful and engaging presentation on the role of applied linguistics in compiling bilingual dictionaries. Okay, so now let's move to our second distinguished and outstanding speaker, who is also specialized in translation, Mr. Dr. Azdin Khalloufi. So he started teaching in this university, but before this university, I think, you were in Jeddah, right? So Professor Azdin Khalloufi started his career at Shu'aib Dukali University, Jeddah, and then moved to the University of Moulay Ismail Meknes. In 2000, he was granted the fellowship of the Tracking Cultures program by UT, the University of Texas, at Austin, USA. In 2017, he was a visiting professor for Erasmus at the University of Lublin, Poland. He participated in a number of international conferences and has a number of publications in French and in English. His first publication on translation was in 1996 in the periodical Tarjuman, published by King Fahd, School of Translation, Tangier. In 2011, he published the autobiographic novel, War Prisoner, which he translated from French into English. Among the institutions that solicited his translation work, we can cite the CCM, Centre Cinématographique Marocain, and the BIEF, Bureau International des Éditeurs Français. So, Dr. Azdin Khalofi, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everybody. Very pleased to be participating in this conference with eminent participants, people whom we have only heard of. And it was a pleasure meeting you physically. I will be talking about figurative language as a challenge to the compiling of bilingual dictionary. Please, you excuse my slide design because basically I'm not good at designing slides. I'm just a speaker. Anyway, what counts is what you will remember after my presentation. Right. I go by asking three questions. Do bilingual dictionaries help in becoming bilingual? Yes, but only very partly. And here I get back to the grammar translation method. You know how they used to learn French in Al-Qarawiyyin early in the 20th century? Because all the learning was done in poetic manner. So, الرأس والأنفون والعنقوق وفي التعبير عن كثير قل بوكو. That's how they used to memorize it. Do they learn the foreign language? Do they become translators? No. And then the second question, which level of bilingualism can one reach based on bilingual dictionaries? And here, I would say less than elementary. Less than elementary level, and I refer you to the tabloids of Learn a Language in 5 Days. Have you seen those books? Yeah. Wow, they pretend specializing in applied linguistics and teaching foreign languages. They pretend being good lexicographers, good dictionary builders, but none of that. Just business hack. Now, are we really concerned only about being bilingual? The literature, we have profuse literature in the domain talking about the necessity of being bicultural as well. And it has become a fact. The third question, do bilingual dictionaries help in becoming a translator? Again, as Professor Alawi mentioned this morning, yes, but only very partly. I mean, you need a lot of background to practice translation. And as you righteously said, Professor Alawi, it's with practice that you become a translator. Not with a degree, not with a certain level of bilingualism. And I need to have a little bracket here concerning departments of foreign languages. So you get a degree in a foreign language, that does not make of you a translator in any way. And we'll talk to Professor Larouz as the dean, and probably there is going to be a pedagogical revision of the programs in the future. I hate the fact that we teach translation to S3 and to S4. They are still suffering with language. Getting out of the course of translation to go and attend the course of grammar. Doesn't make sense. Really doesn't make sense. We need to have a certain level of competence in language first, before pretending to translate. So both bilingualism and translation basically are cases of what we call in sociolinguistics language contact. And language contact in sociolinguistics is studied not academically, but we study societies and how societies come in contact. And this has given rise to varieties of languages that the sociolinguists know as pidgins and creoles. I mean, pidgins first, there is just, we say pidgin does not have a native speaker because the two communities speaking different languages start to find a common ground, and they say talk business, talk pidgin, and then it became called pidgins. When this pidgin gains native speakers, it is called the sociolinguistics creole. And creoles we have in the Pacific Islands, there are lots of them, in Africa, and so on. So I start with the questions that hurt, but it's good to set the scene before we set the tone, as I said this morning. Now the problem is that dictionaries come in words. All dictionaries, they come in words. Of course, dictionaries actually have, words have meaning, whereas the language system, as a meaning generator, works in phrases, sentences, and texts. This is something that is forgotten in the business of dictionary building, right? So Juni this morning mentioned phraseology, but when you are in the field of the practice of translation, you find that it's a big challenge to translate. Now, the conclusion is that dictionaries are paradigmatic, which means that for those of you who understand what is paradigm, the paradigm is, for example, in a certain position in a sentence, you have an adjective, and all the adjectives, it's like when you click on a button and then something starts rolling on and then it is fixed on one. Whereas language basically is syntagmatic, which means that we need to construct knowledge on a linear basis. Otherwise, it won't mean. Otherwise, we would fall into a raqsutat or anfoni, and that's not bilingualism, that's not dictionary building, that's not translation. Now, it has already been mentioned this morning that words in the lexicon are divided into two types. We have technical terms, which Professor Bouchikhi talked about extensively. Technical terms lend themselves easily to the compiling into bilingual dictionaries. Again, it was mentioned by Professor Bouchikhi, once the conceptual definition is provided. So once you have a conceptual definition of a term, you can make it as an entry in a bilingual dictionary. There is a little risk of a term belonging to different domains, and it was mentioned by Professor Bouchikhi, by Professor Medjuni. Let's take, the example of morphology. You have morphology in linguistics, which has a conceptual meaning as a term, morphology in medicine, morphology in geography. And then, to translate that word into another language, you have to specify the field, because the conceptual definition is a must for terminology. The problem is with vocabulary items. They usually carry with them other dimensions of meaning beyond the linguistic one. We have the cultural dimension, the functional dimension, the aesthetic dimension, the communicative dimension, the contextual dimension, and just name it. So compiling bilingual dictionaries of technical terms is basically much easier than compiling bilingual dictionaries based on vocabulary items, for the simple reason that science, once we have a technical term in science, it is perhaps definite forever. Whereas for vocabulary, we have the problem of, it's not a problem, but it's a fact. Language change. نتكلم عن اللغة لأنها لغة حية. Keeps changing. The case with language is that we have been talking since the morning about language, and we have been referring only to the canon, to the classical, to the standard, اللغة المعيار. But there have been lots of attempts at producing bilingual dictionaries of Darija. I have a copy, 2 volumes, Darija English Darija, that was published in 1962 by Abu Talib and Hai. Okay, but do we speak the same Darija as 1962? No. Big question. So, as far as vocabulary is concerned, languages do change. And Here I moved to this is the kind of tawdi'ah, if you like. And I moved to this to talk about translation. A personal definition that I published elsewhere is that translation is the complicated cognitive process of decoding a message and re-encoding it in another code. I will explain that in more detail in a while. And again, I repeat that literary translation is more demanding than technical translation. So, language, or before I move to the next slide, I have to talk about certain challenges that we have in the domain of translation. And in the domain of bilingualism. So we are talking about language, language as a code. Here I'm taking the view of Roman Jakobson. And as I said earlier, you, as a translator, you decode first. So you are addressee, and the function is a connative function. كيف تتفاعل مع النص الذي تقرأه. That's the first step in the translation process, right? Then you change the code and you become addresser, speaker, and that's the emotive function. Why he calls it emotive? Because in every message we deliver, we as well deliver part of us with it. There's not just the cognitive exchange, there is as well the emotional exchange. Language as such, Jakobson talks about context, and for that he says the context serves the referential function, contact, and he says it serves the phatic function, and code serves the metalingual function, which we have been doing since the morning. But all this is a kind of copy and paste of the origin. Ethos, logos, and pathos, since the Greeks. It's only by mid-20th century that concentration on logos has loosened to concentrate a little on ethos and on pathos. In other words, ethos is the sender, logos is the message, pathos is the receiver. It's only in the 20th century that we, in the understanding of the logos, in the understanding of the language, you know that Greeks had logic as a parameter of analyzing languages. They did not talk like in the Chomsky manner about deep structure or surface structure or stuff like that, but a proposition is either true or false. That's how it used to be dealt with. But in the 20th century, new trends in understanding language, communicative approach, pragmatics, that talks about the locution, the logos, the illocution, the ethos, what you put in it, the perlocution, what effect you create, and all these things are at work in the mind of the translator. Translation, I take it sometimes as a kind of emotional challenge, especially when it comes to, not technical stuff, when it comes to literary translation. It's a big emotional challenge, very big emotional challenge. The problem becomes worse when we consider that we have not only one type of meaning. I mean, here I'm really in the realm of what is literary, not what is technical. So there is the contextual meaning, there is the lexical meaning, there is the grammatical structural meaning, there is the logical meaning, denotative meaning, connotative meaning, and associative meaning. And all these meanings have to be present in the mind of the translator. They do not operate one in the exclusion of the other. Sometimes they operate all of them at the same time. Sometimes only one is more prominent than the other. But they have to be kept somewhere in the back of the mind of the translator, because practicing literary translation is a pretty hard job. It's not easy, because it's different from technical translation, because technical translation, you could see this morning when you have the Canva, right? You have the phraseology fixed for writing Sadak. So I have it. So I will change the names, I will change the dates, and that's it. I have a professional translator who is telling me the Canva is there, I just change names, it's a carrot. So he's getting paid just for the paper, because everything is there. We cannot have this in literary translation. Literary translation, our literature as well, comes into genre. Novel is not drama. Drama is not poetry. Poetry is not short story. Literature as well comes in styles. Right? The style of the Renaissance is not like the style of the 20th century. The style of Dickens is not like the style of Hemingway. Literature as well has sometimes the characteristic of being imposed. And here I refer to the literature that was produced in Germany and the Third Reich by Hitler. That culte de la personnalité and imposing a certain style on writers just to serve personal propaganda. So literature is always on the move, and it is moody, because no writer is like the other, and no period is like the other, and it is a reflection of language change. If you take Arabic, Al-Zahid was mentioned this morning, كتاب الحيوان أو البيان والتبيين أو الوقلاء. His writing, Last of Abbasi, is very, very, very different from the writing of Taha Hassin, Abbas Mahmoud Al-Aqad في بداية القرن العشرين, and that writing is completely different from the writing of Ahmed Shukri or Rashid Nindi. So it's the same language. But, and here I'm talking about the canon, I'm not talking about dialects. By the way, we had this discussion just a moment ago. Arabic language has got this characteristic. As a canon, it has no native speaker. But it is still preserved. So, Arab has become just an ethnicity and not a society. There are different societies within the ethnicity, and there is a lot of language variation inside Arabic, to the point that sometimes we need to translate within Arabic from dialect to dialect. I don't think I need to give examples. It's a fact. And one of the characteristics of, or one of the challenges of literary translation is that we have the problem of faithfulness. To whom and to what are we going to be faithful? To the text, to the author, to the historical period, to the genre, to ourselves, to the language canon? Big challenge. And in technical translation, there is no problem of faithfulness. Things are fixed, they are set, copy and paste is there. We have as well another problem in literary translation, which is the problem of equivalence. Already, there is absolutely no one-to-one equivalence. I was going to check in his pocket. I need to check in mine. Sorry. So the other challenge is problem of equivalence. It was mentioned that we have phrases, sentences, and texts, but sometimes even at the level of words. So a fallacy that everybody attempting to translate has to eradicate from his way of thinking is that one-to-one equivalence does not exist, especially in literary translation. And especially when you are moving from Arabic, لغة اشتقاقية بامتياز, to English. I always start my teaching of translation by this little word. You can take it if you like. أنلزمكموها. Safi. Put it in English. Would it give you one word? Never. Never. It's a whole sentence that is composed of the subject, of the object, of the anaphora, of the reference, of the meaning. In order to use a bilingual dictionary, in order to translate this, you will go to the root, لزمة. And you will forget ألف. بمعنى الاستفهام. Asking the question. And then we have an anaphoric problem. Arabic is gendered. أديك ها أنلزمكموها يمكن أن تكون امرأة, and in that case the English her, the word her will be alright. ولكن إذا كانت طويلة أن العربية لغة gender, كل شيء عنده إما مذكر ولا مؤنث. So you need to know the context as well. So the challenges of equivalence are too many. And scholars in literary translation like Octavio Pat, like Shlomo Elbaz, like Mona Baker, there is a big debate between whether it is possible or impossible to translate literature. Right? For example, for translating poetry, some say you should be a poet to translate poetry. Yes, but then big problem. What is poetry itself? The same question, what is poetry, was asked in 1985 in a kind of academic survey, and it was directed to 50 contemporary French poets. The result was amazing. Everyone defines poetry in his own way. 50 different definitions of poetry given by 50 different contemporary poets. So the issue is so big. To sort out the problem in literary translation, there is a resort to what is called translation unit. I mean, to solve the other issue of the problem of equivalence. One-to-one doesn't exist, but we look for a unit is a group of words that generates a self-contained meaning that can be transferable from source language to target language as such. So the translation unit is not something that is measured by length or number of words, but it is measured by its capacity in generating meaning. And that's a fact. The other challenge, and here I will be very brief because I have to finish. I'm taking more than your time. Really?
So you still have 1 minute, okay.
No, not 1 minute, because I'm coming to the real core of the problem. You excuse me, just bear with me. No more than 3 minutes. No more than 3 minutes.
3 minutes, okay. Yeah.
Okay. The challenge هو المجاز اللغوي, figurative language. It's very challenging. مثلا العربية قد يتغزل الشاعر بمحبوبته ويقول لها عيون المها والمها في اللغة العربية الفصحى هي البقرة. Okay, translated into English. You have eyes like a cow. Doesn't work. I mean, adaptation. We keep, in literary translation, we are some sort of chameleons. And we are always looking for the translation unit, but we are looking as well for the functional translation unit. The one that is functional. So figures of speech, we have so many of them. There are figures based on analogy or comparison, metaphor, simile, personification, figures based on substitution, metonymy, synecdoche, and periphrasis, figures based on opposition, antithesis, oxymoron, antiphrasis, and figures based on the emphasis or attenuation of some characteristics, hyperbole, overstatement, understatement, litotes, and euphemism. Well, all these I'm sorry, I don't have time to get into details and to give you examples of each, but they are testable. They are things that you will definitely face while trying to translate a literary text from language A to language B, for sure. But what I'm going to focus on is a different figure of speech, which is called anthropomorphism. And it causes a big problem. Anthropomorphism is derived from the Greek anthropos, which is the human being, and morphe, which is form. That's the Encyclopedia of Religion giving the definition to anthropomorphism. Longman Dictionary of Contemporary English defines anthropomorphism as the idea that gods, animals, or objects have human forms or qualities, or the belief that God can appear in a human or animal form. This has caused a big debate. In literary translation, we have basically علم التأويل, hermeneutics. You start by decoding, and then you re-encode in the other code. But when it comes to the Quran, and you know that the style of Quran is full of anthropomorphism. يد الله فوق أيديهم وجاء الله والملائكة صفا صفا. And it has caused a big debate among mashayikh, Salafiyin, and it has created beyond interpretation and hermeneutics, it has created exegesis. Exegesis هي ذاك المذاهب التأويلية للقرآن. فاللي تيقول التشبيه حرام واللي تيقول يعني الصراع الكلامي اللي كان في العالم العربي أصلاً the root is the verses, the Quranic verses containing anthropomorphism, آيات المتشابهات. ما الأصل ديال الإشكال. Anyway, anthropomorphic, I give the Cambridge Dictionary of Philosophy talks about anthropomorphic gods reflect the ultimate bias, that of the human viewpoint, which means that this is an interpretation that we humans cognitively limited. We نجسم ونشبه على قدر ما يمكننا استيعابه. Full stop. بينما علم الله أزلي, omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient. So it's a different kind of perception, different kind of knowledge. And probably those words were given to us to facilitate for us understanding. And the base of all figurative language is explaining the unknown in terms of what is already known. So God subhanahu wa ta'ala has taken this process and said, let's facilitate the task for the humans and explain to them in accordance with what they already know. So anthropomorphism is really serious. So there is a single greatest God who is not at all like a human being, either in body or in mind. He perceives without the aid of organs. He effects changes without moving through the sheer power of his thought. So you have plenty of examples. I will take just this example. واصبر نفسك مع الذين يدعون ربهم بالغداة والعشي يريدون وجهه. I have two versions of the Quran in English. One translates what is underlined, seeking his approval, and another one, seeking his countenance. And each based on hermeneutics, how we interpreted the text, and based on exegesis, the theological school to which he belongs. All in all, and as a conclusion, I would say that no bilingual dictionary, and this is, get back to the title of my presentation, which is Figurative Language as a Challenge to the Building of and Compiling of Bilingual Dictionaries. I say no bilingual dictionary would help in reaching such a level of translation. And if you want to translate يريدون وجهه, go and use dictionaries. ما عمرك ما تعطي هذاك الشحن الدلالية ديال seeking his approval or seeking his countenance. Now the issue is, this is my last point. Perhaps I'm saying that we should stop translating. You shouldn't understand that. Perhaps I'm saying that we should stop compiling bilingual dictionaries. I don't say that. All I say is that translate with caution and use bilingual dictionaries with a lot of caution. Thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you so much, Professor Khaloufi Azdi, for this insightful and interesting presentation, in which you highlighted figurative language as a challenge to the compiling of bilingual dictionaries. Our next speaker is Dr. Saifak Shma. Professor Saifak Shma earned his PhD degree from Ibn Tufayl University. He earned a certificate in integrating the internet into the classroom from Lewis and Clark College in Portland, USA in 2006. He is a member in the research group of Applied Linguistics and the Teaching of Language at the School of Arts and Humanities, Malaysia University, Meknes. His fields of interest are applied linguistics, M-learning, U-learning, informal learning, skills transfer, psycholinguistics, ICTs and language learning, and the new literacies. So, Professor Saifak Shma, the floor is yours. Okay, so waiting for Professor Aksma to get ready, there is an announcement from the organizers with regard to the certificate of attendance. They are available, so you can get them at the end of the conference, okay?
Thank you so much, Professor Davidi, for introducing me. So first of all, I want to thank the audience, professors and students, guests. Special thanks goes to Mr. the Dean and Vice Deans, and also to the organizing committee for all the colossal efforts they have investigated into making this conference a success. They were totally integrated in marshalling this conference. So as you can see on the title, Lexical Gaps in Bilingual Dictionaries, my rationale behind choosing this topic was being a member in the compiling group led by Professor Leroux for the compiling of a bilingual applied linguistics and language teaching English and Arabic dictionary. I think this dictionary will be a groundbreaking one. And many of us are expecting this dictionary with lots of patience. Okay, so first of all, this is the outline of the whole presentation. Okay, definition of bilingual dictionaries, its typology, classification, compiling process, and then I will move on to the lexical gaps problems. So first of all, what is a bilingual dictionary? It's one that takes in two languages. It defines terms in two languages. It can be linguistic or non-linguistic. When I say linguistic, I mean dictionaries that define language. And non-linguistic are the ones like encyclopedic dictionaries. It can be general, so it can also be specific. It can be unidirectional or bidirectional. If it's unidirectional, it has to choose. I mean, the lexicographers, they have to choose if it will be for the source language users or for the target language users. And I will be defining this later on. Classification, the typological classification of the bilingual dictionary. Labeled translation dictionary or قاموس ثنائي اللغة. It can be unidirectional. How? They list the meanings of words of one language in another, which means as someone who wants to search for a word, you only have to search for the list on the English, English words. Not عينة, but you have to look for the symbol. Bidirectional, it consists of two lists, which means you can search for the word عينة in Arabic and at the same time in English. Non-linguistic, they give information on all branches of knowledge. They are sometimes called encyclopedic dictionaries. They give non-linguistic information, and this is an excerpt taken from the dictionary which is being compiled by the research group of applied linguistics chaired by Professor Lewis. Then linguistic dictionaries, and this is another excerpt from the Cambridge dictionary, Advanced Learners Dictionary. This is sometimes called word book. As for the source language, the classification according to Al-Qasimi in 1983, he classified two types of dictionaries, the source for the speakers of the source language and the speakers of the target language. So let's suppose we as Moroccans, we are speakers. If we want to search for a word on a dictionary, we should go to, mostly all the time we go to the English word and then look for the translation in Arabic, while for the target language they go to Arabic and they search for the word in English. Some dictionaries are called dictionaries for production, others are called dictionaries for comprehension. Those for production cover definitions and terminology of manufacturing, engineering, and dictionaries of comprehension are there to make their users understand words. We also have dictionaries for the human user and dictionaries for machine translation. Lexical dictionaries and encyclopedic dictionaries, I think it's the same word for lexical or linguistic, encyclopedic or for non-linguistic. General dictionaries and special dictionaries. For example, the Dictionary of Applied Linguistics is a special dictionary. Theory of bilingual lexicography. We have two theories. We have practical lexicography, which is the art of compiling, writing, and editing dictionaries, and the theoretical lexicography is the one we're doing today, is doing research, analyzing, describing, etc. Compiling process. So the first step in the compiling process would be profiling the intended users and identifying the needs. I think Professor Afkinish and Professor Ali have already mentioned the intended users of those dictionaries, defining the communicative competence and the cognitive functions of that dictionary. This is the second step. The third one will be selecting and organizing the components of a dictionary and choosing the appropriate structure. Many of us would ask this question of what do we mean by a structure of a dictionary? It covers lots of types of structures. Okay, the first one is what we call the frame structure. As you can see, those words and those entries are put in frames. And this is again another excerpt taken from the Applied Linguistics Dictionary. Second one is the distribution structure, and this is an example from the Cambridge Dictionary. Here I'm talking about the layout. Macro structure. It includes all the definitions, all the specifications of a word, from grammatics, semantics, syntax, morphology, and also pronunciation and orthography. And this one versus the microstructure, which most of us know is the one that is used in language dictionaries. Some forms are called cross-reference structure, which means within the same entry you can search, or they can drive you, especially on online dictionaries or offline digital dictionaries, they can drive you to other dictionaries. Compiling process, I haven't yet finished the compiling process, selecting words and affixes for systemization as entries, selecting collocations, phrases, and examples, choosing lemma forms. Here lemma, I mean headings, heading form. Forms for each word or part of a word to be lemmatized, defining words, organizing definitions, specifying pronunciation of words, and at the end, translation. And translation is the one we are going to focus on today. Okay, before moving on to the problem of lexical gaps, let's see the types of needs that users of dictionaries are. So we have information needs to check spellings, meanings, synonyms, pronunciation and etymology, and process needs. When performing a task, you just resort or you call on the dictionary to understand a word or to see the spelling. Okay, on the title we have lexical gaps. Sometimes they're referred to as accidental gap, paradigm gap, accidental lexical gap, lacuna, hole in the pattern, non-existing word sense, or morpheme. Here are some examples of lexical gaps brought to you from the Dictionary of Applied Linguistics. Okay, some of the words, what do we mean by lexical gaps? Sometimes we search for a word in English. When we want to translate a word from a language to another, we fail to find a synonym in the other language. That's what we call a lexical gap. Some words are Scantron tests. You know what is a Scantron test? It's the one that uses OMR, which is optical mark recognition, which is in French PCM, questionnaire à choix multiple. Okay, when we looked for the word, for the translation of this word in Arabic, unfortunately we didn't find. Schema theory, no translation. If you want to translate, you need to use other words, like maybe. School-wide program, برنامج دعم مدرسي, which is not, does not describe the same, the entry. Seat work, which is the individual work done by a student, العمل الفردي داخل القسم. Self-fulfilling prophecy, here the translation should be nubu'a, but it doesn't have anything to do with nubu'a. And one, streaming, the use of homogeneous groups in teaching. So if we want to translate streaming, we would find tadafuq, which is not the right meaning. And one famous example, we didn't have it on the dictionary, but it's a famous word which is selfie. I think everybody knows selfie, but could you find a translation to the word selfie? Nobody can. And this is a lexical gap, a famous lexical gap. What are those causes of lexical gaps or lacuna? No language coining. What is a language coining? Language coining is inventing new words. Like the very famous word, which is hobbit, which stands for dwarf. It was invented by the J.R.R. Tolkien a long time ago, the author of the Lord of the Rings. Arabic has very limited borrowing. It doesn't borrow. Though some professors in the morning said that one of the solutions would be borrowing. But you know, Arabic shows a lot of resistance when it comes to borrowing. Okay, here the word, as an example, café, which is borrowed from French to English. No affixation. Affixation English uses this method to invent new words like understand, misunderstand. No suffixation in Arabic. And that's an example. Few compounding. No compound adjectives or compound words like allocations, etc. No syntactic changing. Syntactic changing, I'll give you the example of Google. At first it was a noun, but later on they used the same word as a verb to Google. This means the search. No acronyms in Arabic. No clipping. You know what is clipping? Shortening some words, like vet, like ad, yeah, for advertisement. This means that Arabic suffers from generalitivity of the Arabic grammar. It doesn't generate. Okay, look at this map. When we look at this map, we see those are endangered languages. On this map, we don't have Arabic as an endangered language. Why? Because according to the UNESCO, Arabic, all the Arab world speaks Arabic, which is not true, which is a big mistake. But normally, Arabic should be the first language put on this map. Other problems are Arabic is an atypical language, inaccurate in new sciences and fields of study, does not produce science but tries to regulate literary language. And in this trial to regulate literary language come lots of problems. And look, some of the new words that were brought to Arabic is the word hadata. Once they wanted to find or to use this word to mean something new or innovation, they brought it from the very famous hadith, which is عن جابر بن عبد الله قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وإياكم ومحدثات الأمور فإن كل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. So this shows the Arabic language resistance to change and resistance to adopt and host new words. Also the word mujtama, society, it's not an old word, it's a new word which was again adopted from jami', which means everything should have something to do with religion, with culture, And those are some of the big problems of the Arabic language. Its speakers shift to speak in other languages, and here we're still describing the Arab world. Moroccan Darija, Tunisian Darija, and other, so those are not Arabic, but its speakers already shifted to not associated with economic and social power. I think Professor Leroux has already mentioned this. Linkage with identity, okay, it has very strong linkage with identity. All Arabs, when you want to just to criticize the language, they show negative attitudes towards separating their identity from their language. Linkage with religion and sanctity. Okay, some of the possible solutions would be if direct translation or literal translation or formal what we call it, word to word. When word to word translation fails, we can use adaptation of untranslatable words, and if adaptation fails, we can use what we call word creation. But word creation, as I said before, fails all the time. At the end, this does not mean that we don't have solutions. We have solutions because some words may defy translation, but languages cannot. Thank you so much.
Okay, so thank you so much, Professor Seif Akhshma, for this insightful speech on lexical gaps in bilingual dictionaries. Is there a solution? Our last speaker is Dr. Jabbour Mustafa. And جبور مصطفى سيعطي مداخلة حول تدريس الترجمة بالجامعات المغربية والتفاوتات البيداغوجية، الأسباب والانعكاسات. الدكتور مصطفى جبور خريج مركز الدراسات الدكتوراه لسانيات تواصل ترجمة بكلية الأدب والعلوم الإنسانية تطوان، مهتم بالحقل البيداغوجي للترجمة وعضو مركز الشباب للأبحاث والتنمية. له عدة مساهمات علمية منشورة في مجال الترجمة بما فيها المشاركة في مؤلفات جماعية. الكلمة لكم. The floor is yours. Okay, you have.
Maybe we say darkum. Right.
سعيد بتسجيل الدعوة الكريمة لي. غير قبل ما تبدا إذا سمحتي أنا غير نقول واحد كلمة في حق السي جبور مصطفى. I had the pleasure to supervise his PhD thesis. He has written a wonderful PhD, well thought out, and then it dealt with the teaching of translation at the university level. And then the issue he tackled was really very, very interesting. And I think every teacher, normally of translation, should have a copy of the thesis. And then it was field work, very practical. I mean, a lot of surveys, a lot of questions to students, to teachers, and really it's so wonderful. I really commend him on the wonderful job he has achieved and has completed. Okay, and this is the reason why I invite him to be with us this afternoon to talk about his experience he accumulated with teachers and different schools of in Morocco. The sort of yours.
شكرا على الكلمة الطيبة. حقيقة جد سعيد التواجد معكم لدلو في هذا المحفل العلمي. أتوجه أيضا بتحية إلى المحضرين هذا اللقاء العلمي والمحاضرين كل الزميل والحضور بطبيعة الحال. الحقيقة ما سأقدمه اليوم ليس من بنات أفكاري أو من تخرصات أو من بطول الكتب، هو في الحقيقة بحث ميداني وطني أجريته موسم 2015 على 9 كليات بالمغرب، وكانت عدد العينات التي تم التفاعل بشكل إيجابي مع البحث الميداني 72 أستاذ، يعني 72 عينة من أصل 100 أستاذ، وهذه المعطيات في الحقيقة توصلنا إلى مجموعة متفاوتة قد تصل إلى التناقضات، وسأقدم هذه المعطيات خطوة بخطوة، ولكن ليس بالتركيز على مجمل المؤشرات والمتغيرات، فقط بإعطاء لمحة على بعض المؤشرات الأساسية التي لها علاقة بالبيداغوجيا في هذه الورقة. استدعى محاولة تسليط الضوء بعد هذا البحث على بعض العوامل الأساسية المؤثرة في درس الترجمة، انطلاق المقاربة الميدانية في الترجمة، بل انطلاق المقاربة الميدانية المجرية عن التدريس بالتركيز على عنصرين هام من مجتمع الدراسة وهو المدرس، وفي محاولة الكشف عن العموميات البيداغوجية التربوية في جانبها من جانب وانعكاساتها المتوقعة على الخصوصية الديداكتيكية من جانب آخر. وآلية الرصد المعتمدة في هذا البحث تمثلت في البحث الميداني وسيلة الاستمارة، وهذه وسيلة الاستمارة فرضتها في الحقيقة انعدام أو قلة بعض الحقائق التي قد يدلي على بعض الأساتذة المهتمين بهذا الجانب البيداغوجي. تقريبا حد عين 3 أساتذة كتبوا في المغرب في هذا الجانب، منهم أستاذ أحمد علاوي وأستاذ أحمد جوهري وأستاذ أحمد محرش. لهذا اضطررت في الحقيقة أنا قد أقوم ببحث ميداني موسع كلفني تقريبا قرابة عامين، يعني 2 من البحث لتنقل به الجامعات للوصول إلى الحقيقة كما قلت لكم. التي تمثل هذه الورقة إضافة جديدة إلى باكورة البحث العلمي في حق الدراسة الترجمية. استدعى الأمر استعانة كما قلت بالعلم الميداني الذي به يمكن للباحث الحصول على المعلومات والمعطيات الضرورية لمقاربة البحث. وعانت في دراسة الموضوع والظاهرة التي تناولها ورسالة البحث الميداني اعتمدت بشكل كبير في هذا العمل كانت الاستمارة، أملها قبل كل شيء افتقار إلى البيانات المرجعية والإحصاء في هذا المضمار كما أشار إلى ذلك أستاذ عبد الله العميد، فضلا عما إلح عليه الباحث بول كوسمول في أن تدريس الترجمة ينبغي أن يرتكز على أساس قاعدة بحث معطيات ميدانية، وهم نكون قد أفلحوا في تأسيس قاعدة بيانات لمن يرغب في التعمق والبحث في هذا الجانب. وعليه حاولنا في بداية الكشف عن بعض مظاهر الانقباض البيداغوجي التي يعرفها درس الترجمة ووقع على عملية التدريس لتجاوز الافتراضات النظرية والأفكار القابلة التي لا تؤيدها الحقائق الميدانية، بالتركيز على بعض المؤشرات التي لها علاقة بالخصائص العلمية أفراد مجتمع الدراسة، ومحاولة فهم العوامل التي تتحكم بشكل كبير في ظروف أداء درس الترجمة في هذا الوسط الذي يضم العديد من المتغيرات التعليمية للكشف عن أوضاع تدريس الترجمة بالجامعة وانعكاساتها على محاور الدرس. كما ترون في الجدول الأول كمجموعة متغيرات، لكن فقط اكتفيت بتسليط الضوء على الشواهد المحصلة عليها. في الحقيقة قد تبدو هذه الأسئلة من البديهيات، لكن في الحقيقة هذه البديهيات تكون فيها الشيطان كما تكون في تفاصيل الشيطان. لكن تفاجأت بها، قد تتفاجؤون أنتم بدوركم في بعض المعطيات التي توصلتوا بها، سواء فيما يتعلق بالشواهد العلمية المحصلة عليها وكذا التخصص الذي تنتمي إليه. كانت الغاية من هذا السؤال المتعلق بالمستوى العلمي الذي يشير إلى الماستر أو ما يعادله أو الدكتوراه، أو لمعرفة المستوى العلمي لأفراد العينة. ثانيا معرفة التخصص الغالب على مزاولي نشاط تدريس الترجمة، ومن جهة أخرى مدى تلائمه مع طبيعة المادة. جاءت الحصيلة على الشكل التالي: مثلت نسبة الحاصلين على شهادة الدكتوراه من مجموع مدرسي مادة الترجمة والتعليم العالي 88%، بينما شكل الأفراد الحاصلين على الماستر أو ما يعادل 8%. هاد الناس ديال الماستر كيقرروا في الجامعة. انطلاق المعطيات الواردة في الجدول يظهر أن التخصص الغالب لدى مدرسي الترجمة، يعني قمنا هنا بمقارنة متغيرين، يعني عدد الشواهد والتخصص للوصول إلى بعض النتائج. يظهر أن التخصص الغالب على مدرسي مادة الترجمة هو اللسانيات بنسبة 33%، وهذا يكشف ويؤكد المعطى الذي لم يعد يخفى على أحد، بل وأكده الأستاذ العميد أن لهم تخصص في اللسان في الغالب الأحيان. ويأتي في المرتبة الثانية بعد هذه الحالة الأساتذة الذين لهم تخصص في الآداب مقارن بنسبة 22%. أما التخصص الذي كان من أجدر توفره لدى مدرسي الترجمة في الجامعات، يعني تخصص دراسة الترجمة، فلم يشكل إلا نسبة 2%، يعني 2% تقريبا الكليات كاع اللي شفت يلا فيهم 2 3 أساتذة عندهم علاقة بالتخصص. وهذا ما يكشف عن الخصائص الكبير عن مدرسي الترجمة الذين لهم شواهد تتناسب مع طبيعة المادة، إلا أن هذا العجز يمكن تغطيته. قمت ببعض الأرقام الواردة في الجدول هي بين قوسين، قمت بمقارنة متغيرين 2 بدون أن أدرج الجدول لانتهاء ديال التكرار، وتوصلت أن بعض الأساتذة قريبين من الموضوع من التخصص انطلاقا من شواهد الماستر أو الديزاين التي لها علاقة، يعني كانوا كيحضروا الديزاين والماستر تخصص الترجمة. هذا ما قد يدفع عن المقال أن المعدل منهم علاقة بنشاط تدريس الترجمة يصل إلى 8%. وصرحت شريحة أخرى من مدرسي هذه المادة يصل إلى 12% أن لها تخصصات أخرى بعيدة عن طبيعة المادة لا تدور حتى في فلك التخصصات القريبة من الترجمة مثل اللسانيات والأدب المقارن، وهذا ما لمسه محراش من خلال احتكاكه مع نظرائه في مهنة التدريس على مستوى مجموعة من الكليات، في حين يبقى معظم مدرسي الترجمة إما أساتذة اللسانيات والأدب في قسم اللغة الإنجليزية على الحد تعبيره، وهذا له دلالة على أن تدريس مادة الترجمة ما زال موكولا للمصادفة أو من باب ما أدلى الرغبة في تدريسها كما أشار ذلك الأستاذ أحمد العلوي. وقد يصل الأمر إلى مسألة تكليف لا يراعي اختصاصات ولا مولات ولا حتى طبيعة تكوين المدرسين اللغوي والفكري والوجداني لهؤلاء المدرسين. الأمر الذي سيكون له بلا شك تأثير على سير ووقع تدريس الترجمة في الفصل حتى ولو كانت مجرد مادة ثانوية. كما أن هذا الحضور الكبير لمدرسي اللسانيات والأدب المقارن على حساب مدرس تخصص الترجمة ليس من المستعد كما أشار أنطوني بين في سياق آخر أن يشكل لوبي حاصين من المدرسين الذين يؤسسون سلطتهم على اللسانيات أو على الأدب. قد يرغب مدرس مثلا اللسانيات المقارنة أن ينعتوا بشكل من الأشكال أن نشاطه هو نشاط عنده علاقة بالترجمة. في نقطة ثانية عندها علاقة بأوضاع تدريس الترجمة، يعني انتقلت في نقطة أخرى أو إلى مؤشر آخر البحث عن خصائص، يعني ربما قد يبدو هذا السؤال مرة أخرى بديهيا، يعني الفضاء مع قسم قاعة مشتركة أو خاصة، عدد حصص، عدد طلبة، لكن في نفس الوقت نكتشف معطيات أخرى يعني يصعب على المدرس الترجمة أن يضبط فيها درسه بشكل لائق أو بشكل لازم. بعد طرح الأسئلة المتعلقة بالبيانات العلمية التي تخص العينات تطرق في الأسئلة تخص أحوال تدريس مادة الترجمة في التعليم العالي، وذلك بالسؤال عن خصائص الفضاء الذي يشتغل به الأساتذة وأعداد الطلاب، بالإضافة إلى عدد حصص مخصصة لهذه المادة وغيرها من التغييرات الأخرى التي سأتناولها في القناة القادمة. وتندرج هذه العناصر التي تعرفوها من اختياري بل هي تنتمي إلى ما يسمى بالوضعية الديداكتيكية كما أشارت إلى ذلك الباحثة إليزابيث، وتتكون من التعليم وفضاء التدريس والمدرس والإيقاع الزمني. فضاء التدريس هنا يحيل على قاع التدريس وأعداد المتعلمين وتجانس مجموعة المتعلمين، ثم الإيقاع الزمني ويشمل مادة الدرس والدورة والبرنامج، لكن هنا نركز فقط على الدرس يعني حصة. فضاء الاشتغال تفصح الأرقام الواردة في الجدول أمامكم عن واقع تدريس مادة الترجمة في المؤسسات التي تم زيارتها من حيث أعداد الطلبة وطبيعة القاعة فيما إن كانت صغيرة أو كبيرة، وإن كان الحال في الغالب عن باقي التخصصات لأن هذا له تأثير على إجراء درس الترجمة. وتوصلنا إلى 93% تقريبا يدرسون في قاعات مشتركة. من المنطقي إدراج هذا المعطى لما له من واقع على سير عملية التدريس نظرا لكون قاعة خاصة أيسر الحجم ذات مردود أفضل عند إنجاز أنشطة واستراتيجية البيداغوجية، لأنها تسمح بالتحكم في شكل أيسر في تعديل إجراء بيداغوجي يلبي حاجات المتعلم، بينما تنحصر هذه الإمكانيات في القاعات العمائية كبيرة الحجم. وعزى هذا الأمر إلى أسباب غالبا كما توصلنا في الحقيقة مجموعة من المعطيات التي لا قبل العقل حاول تفسيرها تلقى من بعد ما توصلنا ما كتبه الباحثون في هذا الجانب، حيث يعزى الأمر إلى أسباب تربوية أكثر من هذه اللكسيكية، إما لطبيعة الرغبة من تدريسها أو بسبب المكون الثاني في فضاء التدريس والذي يؤدي إلى عدد المتعلمين. فيما يتعلق بهذه النقطة صرحت فيها أخرى من صرحت مجموعة من الأساتذة أن أكثر من 50 طالب يكون في القسم بنسبة 55%، بين فئة أخرى صرحت بأن من 40 إلى 50 طالب يكونوا في حصة الترجمة بنسبة 13%، وهذا ما يفعل من خلال هذا المعطى التساؤل عن إمكانيات البيداغوجية والديداكتيكية المتاحة والممكنة لإجراء أي نشاط تعليمي من طرف مدرس الترجمة للطبيعة الخاصة لهذه المادة. والمبيان الذي أمامكم كفيل بتوضيح هذه المتغيرات على انطلاق مجموعة من الكليات. هذه الكليات التي قمت حقيقة بزيارتها بناء على الظروف التي سمح يعني تيسر الأمر بزيارتها، وبناء على مجموعة من المؤشرات أخرى حيث قمت بزيارة المؤسسات التي لا بها ماستر في الترجمة أو إجازة مهني في الترجمة، حيث حاولت ما يمكن استهداف أكبر قدر منهم من الأساتذة الذين يدرسون الترجمة في ذلك الموسم. الإطار الزمني تم حول سؤال آخر في الاستماع حول عدد حصص مادة الترجمة في الأسبوع، وقد قدرت فيها مدة الحصة بساعة أو ساعتين. جاءت نتائج على الشكل التالي أسفلها كما هو ظاهر أمامكم، حيث صار 77% من الأساتذة أنهم لا يدرسون إلا حصة واحدة، وأفاد بهذا المعطى 29 عينة. حقيقة لم يسأل فقط على عدد الحصص، ولكن في نفس الوقت أي سؤال نرفقه بسؤال ثاني مثلا هل هي كافية؟ في الحقيقة توصلنا إلى مجموعة من الأساتذة يشيرون إلى أنها غير كافية، وفي نفس الوقت عينة أخرى بسيطة عددها بسيط يقول بأنها إلى حد ما كافية، وهذا دليل على مثلا على أنه ربما لا رغبة لهم في تدريس هذه المادة وربما يعتبرها مجرد مادة ثانوية. وهذا ينم بشكل عام على أن أغلب الجامعات ومعاهد التكوينات والترجمة التي محدودة عبر بعض المجالات التي تختلف من سكن إلى آخر نظرا لتباين التصورات وتفاوت الاستعدادات. التركيب اللغوي انتقلنا لنقطة أخرى. التركيبة اللغوية حاولنا في نقطة أخرى معرفة التركيبة اللغوية التي تغلب على تدريس الترجمة في كلية المغرب، لما لهذا الأمر من دلالات قد تكشف عن طبيعة تدريسها أو الغاية من ورائها. ففي هذا الصدد يشجع العديد من الباحثين في حق الترجمة على اعتماد اللغة الأجنبية كمصدر للترجمة، واعتبار اللغة الأم لما لهذه المجموعات واعتبار اللغة الأم الهدف لما لهذه المجموعة من الاعتبارات اللغوية والثقافية وحتى المهنية كما أشار ذلك مارتن بيدر. غير أن النتائج تشير أن النسبة ضئيلة لهذا التوجه في التدريس، وتبقى على نسبة الاختيار الثالث الذي يشير الى اعتماد معظم اساليب التعليم العالي على الترجمه من والى اللغه العربيه بنسبه 72%، وهذا راجع الى النهج الذي تعتمد الكليات في ادراج ماده الترجمه في مسالك اللغه، وذلك بتخصيص احدى الدورات في الترجمه من اللغه الاجنبيه والدوره الاخرى في الترجمه الى اللغه العربيه. في الحقيقه هذا الجدول الذي امامكم حاولنا في بعض الاسئله ديال في الاستماره ديال سؤال او نسي، يعني نحاول ما يمكن الوصول الى الحقيقه في مجموعه من الاسئله، يعني تقريبا تقدر ب 250 سؤال في الاستماره، ويبدو ان بعض الاسئله مكرره، ولكن في الحقيقه هي محاوله لاعاده التاكد من اننا سنحصل على نفس النتائج التي توصلنا. في الحقيقه توصلنا الى نتائج متناقضه، فمثلا كما يظهر في امامكم في هذه المبنيه مثلا دراسه الترجمه او الادب وقارئ، لا تكون فقط تدرس الادب وقارئ يدرسون اللسانيات، هم اساتذه يدرسون اللسانيات والادب في نفس الوقت. يعني اكتشفنا هو ان في الحقيقه التفاوتات لا تقتصر فقط على ماده الترجمه، بل وكذلك حتى باقي التخصصات الاخرى. كان شو الوقت نذكر نقطه مهمه.
كاش نقطه مهمه
مزاولة نشاط نرجع السؤال حاولنا ما يمكن نستفسروا عليه الاساتذه ديال الترجمه فمدى مزاولتهم لمهنه تدريس الترجمه، يعني ممارسات لنشاط الترجمه. فكانت النتائج كما يظهر امامكم نسبه حقيقه صراحه نسبه كبيره من المدارس بانها تمارس الترجمه تقدر ب 44%، وهذا جميل. والذي يسمح هذا السؤال يسمح بحول مزاوله تخرج الاجتماع الدراسي من الترجمه الى جانب التدريس، كانت غايمين في معرفه ما يمكن هذه هناك مزاوجه بين هذين العمليتين نظرا للفائده الكبيره تحققها وتقدم عند استثمارها في اداره الترجمه، لكون المدرسين الذين لم يسبق لهم ان ابدوا ابدا ان كانوا مترجمين محترفين وحتى ممارستهم للترجمه احيانا الى جانب تدريسها يتجهون الى الاتكاء على الجوانب اللغويه للترجمه او على ما يمكن يجدوا في المقارنات، وحين يعتمد على رصيدهم العلمي انحصروا فقط في القواعد اللغويه التقليديه للترجمه. غير ان كما اشار الاستاذ عبد الله العامل ان نسبه متعاظمه من الاكاديميين بدات تقتحم ميدان الترجمه في ممارسه ما تاتي ان نطاقها يتسع شيئا فشيئا، ولهذا الاتجاه المزدوج في مجال تدريس الترجمه في المجال المهني، ومن المجال المهني لمجال تدريس افضل الاثار على مستوى الوعي بمنافع التعليم والممارسه. غير ان هذا الاتجاه الاخير اي من المجال المهني الى مجال التدريس لا زال خافتا، وهذا التشجيع يقدر جزئيه فقط من الاساتذه الذين يمارسون الترجمه في معاهد في مؤسسات خاصه. ويبقى من وجهه نظر العام توفر المهني كشرط اساسي لتدريس الترجمه، فيبقى من وجهه نظر اخرى متطرفه لقول أنطونيوس بان تبني هذا الشرط قد تكون المساله هنا غير قانونيه من جانبها الاداري. أعتذر من الوقت. ننتقل إلى الأخطار أو الانعكاس الخاتمة. على أي هكذا نرى تعدد العوامل الأولية المساهمة في احتدام الاختلافات والتناقضات. بدا جليا أن تدريس الترجمة بحاجة ماسة إلى بيداغوجية تأخذ بعين الاعتبار خصوصية المادة وحاجتها إلى التكييف ببيداغوجية تسمح لها بتحقيق هذا التعايش الصعب، تعايش بداية الترجمة، وضرورة المؤسسة التعليمية والالتزامات الديداكتيكية التي بإطراحها والتعليم وتعلم الترجمة، وهو مفروض على الجامعات اليوم في المغرب إعادة التفكير في هذا الوضع البيداغوجي وحاول استثنائه وإخصابه كخطاب وممارسة ليفتح المجال للأصوات في هذا السياق، لأنه لا يمكن الحديث عن منظومة تعليمية ناجحة للوقوف عمليا على دور المدرس في هذا السياق. شكرا.
شكرا جزيلا للدكتور مصطفى شبور على هذه المشاركة الطيبة حول موضوع تدريس الترجمة بالجامعات المغربية والتفاوتات البيداغوجية الأسباب والانعكاسات. Now it is time for our distinguished members of the audience to interact with our outstanding speakers. So I would like you to be very precise and concise and very brief, and don't make your democratic moderator into a dictator. Yes, please. Okay, so say Mustafa.
Okay.
Please.
Thank you very much, all speakers, all presenters. I'm going to comment on comments and raise some questions concerning Professor Laroux's presentation. Thank you for that very rich presentation. And okay, I thank you very much, Mr. Dean, for the very rich presentation you have, in which you have highlighted the importance of applied linguistics in dictionary compilation. That's a very important point. And as I always tell my students here present, I mean, in the course of aspects of sociolinguistics or sociopragmatics, when I tackle the point of standardization, in the notion of standardization, and they tell me a frequent question, recurrent question is always here in Agadir. I mean, Mr. Jabor was maybe present there. I mean, they ask, how come, I mean, that Amazigh language is not a standard language, but it is an official one? There is a difference between an official language and a standard language, of course. And here, I mean, comes my question. One of the requirements of a language to be standard is, I mean, according to Fishman and Ferguson, there are 4 parameters. One of them is called the elaboration of code. And elaboration of code is the preparation of dictionaries, I mean, for that language to be standard. Amazigh language is official in the constitution. Okay, and we see that in المعهد الملكي للثقافة الأمازيغية وهذا, it's full with people, I mean, who are not versed in linguistics, let alone applied linguistics. And one of the things that they are required to do, and they are paid for that, is to compile dictionaries, I mean, for Amazigh language, to make it a standard language. But most of the people in there, I mean, they are not applied linguists. And they have nothing to do with linguistics at all. Okay, there are people who are concerned with some other things like advertisement and so on. And look at the thing. I mean, when they were preparing course books, I mean, for the teaching of Tamazight, I mean, it was really something. How shall I qualify it? I mean, it's disastrous. Yeah, disastrous. I mean, somebody, I mean, who was including certain items and words, lexical items in those, I mean, textbooks which are made all Morocco, I mean, laugh.
Thank you so much.
So, just a recommendation, I mean, for the dean from his position as a dean. I mean, I would suggest that, I mean, here in this faculty, I mean, we have got groups of research, and especially for people who are preparing their PhDs. I mean, why they don't get together, I mean, around a project where they can, I mean, prepare dictionaries, and they are all, I mean, especially those versed in linguistics. I mean, they are the best, I mean, students for that job. I mean, instead of reading that for, I don't want to mention names, but for Ayush and for the rest.
Thank you so much, Mustafa. Yes. What is your name? Yes, you may.
Thank you first for the very captivating presentation. It was quite brief, to the point, and worthwhile. Well, I just would like to provide you with my point of view in what relates to the use of bilingual dictionaries. Well, it's just a point of view, and I do respect others' perspectives. Well, I cannot endorse the use of bilingual dictionaries. I mean, I'm against the use of bilingual dictionaries for 2 main reasons. On the one hand, they can foster the learner's laziness and, let's say, intellectual stagnation. and they won't be able to go through the comprehension process, which is to understand the authentic meaning of the word, to conjure it up, and to relate it to the context in which it is used. This is on the one hand. On the other hand, the use of bilingual dictionaries promotes the learner's tendency to think in the mother tongue.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Iman. Yes, please. Yeah, Ali.
Okay, so this question is addressed to my professor, Mohammed Larouz. Is it a necessity to work with an applied language as a lexicographer? I mean, is it possible to work with, a general linguist who masters all aspects of the English language in particular, or should it be an applied linguist in particular?
Thank you. Thank you, Ali. Mohammed?
I actually got some questions, and I'm addressing the first question to my professor, Dr. Khaloufi. So you said that we need to be cautious when we use a bilingual dictionary. My question is, in what ways? For example, can we be cautious by being more knowledgeable? The second question is addressed to Dr. Akshmar. You said that, what do you mean by the idea that Arabic shows resistance to borrowing? Is the hadith you mentioned enough to say that Arabic shows resistance? Is it really enough? And how do you find resistance in the first place? My third question is addressed to Dr. Jabbar. ما هي توصياتكم التي يعني خلصتم بها يعني بعد قيامكم بالبحث؟ And thank you.
Okay, so thank you so much, Mohammed. Okay, so I think it's really, yes sir, okay. See, Tawfiq Abkinish, yes please. And Fuad. So Tawfiq and Fuad.
It's not really a question. It's just like I'm trying to, if you allow me, otherwise I'll just like to bounce on certain things that I have heard in all the very interesting presentations that the panel has kind of treated us with there. But I have certain things to respond to there. I think that one of them has to do with Dr. Jabbar. I start with you because you're the latest. أنت آخرهم. سأقولها باللغة العربية. أعتقد أنه من المجحف. اسمح لي الكلمة اللي كانت مستقبلها هنا، ولكن أعتقد أنه من المجحف أن نحاسب مؤسسة كمؤسسات شعاب اللغة الإنجليزية على طريقة تدريسها للترجمة، وذلك راجع لكون هذه الشعاب في أدبياتها ما تم اعتماده من محتوى الدرس، وحتى في عملية إقحام تدريس الترجمة كمادة في مستوى من المستويات لم يكن هدفه تدريس الترجمة، يعني إعطاء الطالب فرصة لكي مدخل مالبط لكي يتعاطى للترجمة، بقدر ما أن هذا الدرس صمم لخلق فرصة أكثر لشرح اللغة الإنجليزية التي شعبة اللغات الإنجليزية وأدبها حقيقة لا تدرس اللغة الإنجليزية ولكنها تدرس عن اللغة الإنجليزية، ودرس الترجمة يعطي فرصة لتوضيح the workings of the language. ماشي باش بلي يخدموا ترجمة. إذن أنا أعتقد أننا كان ممكن هذا البحث ديالك يقتصر على مدرسة فهد مثلا، هي اللي عندنا ديال الترجمة، هي المؤسسة التي فيها الترجمة واللي ممكن نقوموا فيها بهذا البحث هذا. مش هذه الشيء الآخر نسيته.
Thank you so much. Fuad. The last one is a female. Yes. Okay.
Thank you very much for your presentations. We really appreciate it. And my question to Mr. Khaloufi, thank you. You were my professor the year, I think, 2004, and we have a quarrel about the word, how we translate the word email. And they say emailat, and you say no, and I keep on that. I think I like if you change your mind right now, because you know, as our colleague said, some words it's difficult to translate from one language to another. So my question here, dealing with Quran verses, I think that the debate raised years ago between Mu'tazila and Ahl Sunnah. It was a quarrel and a debate. You know, Ahl Sunnah and Jima, they quarrel about it. They defend that translation should keep it like that, the literal meaning, without going beyond the text. But the problem that raises with Mu'tazila, they go beyond, for example. The verse in Quran, كيفية الاستواء يستوي على العرش. Okay, so they go beyond. So and you mentioned at the end that we shouldn't go beyond so as to avoid such struggles and demonstration and manifestation. But I think if we keep just like that, we couldn't move, we couldn't advance. So we have to be flexible. Okay. So this is my question. Second question to Sir Mustafa. شكرا على المحاضرة ديالك أستاذ. عندي سؤال. هل تلاحظون أن هناك تقصير على مستوى طلبة اللغة العربية في تنسيقهم مع طلبة اللغة الإنجليزية؟ علاش ما يكونش واحد التنسيق؟ تنظن بأننا حاليا الكل يشتغل وفق واحد المسار ولكن بدون واحد الرؤية شاملة. علاش ما تكونش واحد الرؤية شاملة؟ ممكن نكونوا نطوروا أهدافنا أكثر وأكثر. وشكرا.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So the last one is Fatima Zahra.
Thank you for your presentations. They were really insightful and thought-provoking. So my question is addressed to Dr. Khaloufi. Because I have literary inclinations and you talked about literature. So you said that, and maybe you have mentioned in your presentation that you should be a poet, translate poetry. I would like to know how much do you, how much do you agree with this stand, and don't you think that the poetic inclinations and maybe the identity of the poet interferes in translating another poet's work? Thank you.
Could you please hand the mic to that student over there? Thank you.
I thought I was last.
What is your name?
Yusuf.
Yusuf. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just want to relate to Mr. Dean's. He raised two questions which are very important. Semantics and lexicology, can they go all together, and why? I think because, and Professor Akshan and Professor Khaloufi answered part of this question, because there is always the difference between intention and real meaning. Some meanings are universal, like if we see, for example, the word arq, shajara, and tree, they have the same meaning, but some words, they are language specific and they are culturally oriented. And that's why we have to deal with semantics and link it to lexicology. The second question was about which type of dictionary is best. Is it bilingual or monolingual or trilingual? I think it depends on the use. If we see many learners and many translators have this problem with meaning making and context. So in terms of technical language, for example, you have to look for a monolingual to get the target, the source language, and then translate it into the target language. But if it's literary or for other purposes, it's best to use multilingual dictionaries, for they are beneficial for to increase language awareness and other skills. Thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you so much for these interesting questions. So let's give the floor to the Dean of the School of Arts and Humanities to answer the questions and answers.
Okay, thank you, Hisham. I'll briefly react to some of the questions and comments, addressed by the audience. Siflay, first, Amazir, you said it's an official language, but it's not standardized. But I agree with you. If perhaps, I'm not sure whether there are no specialists in applied linguistics who would help, in making or in standardizing the language. So there must be something wrong.
No, I said contributing to the standardization at the level of the codification.
I think they can. And I think this Royal Institute of Amazigh, they have contributed, let's say, with a modest, perhaps with a shy contribution in textbook design. I mean, they have been able to design textbook for primary schools, and they have incorporated the 3 varieties of the Amazigh language. Now, so this is the first, initiative. They took initiative of writing textbooks in Tarifit, in Amazigh, and in. And I think the first person to introduce is like an American who was conducting research, and then it's like he unexpectedly, out of the blue, say, look what your Royal Institute is doing. We were not familiar with it maybe 10, 15 years ago. So they could have developed this if they wish. So for Seali, I think, is it a necessity? I think, yes, it's a necessity. I mean, if you want to compile the dictionary, you should have background information, as I said, both not just in theoretical, descriptive, general linguistics, but also in applied linguistics. Because, I mean, it's not sufficient. It's not enough to know about theoretical linguistics, but also you need to know about macro linguistics, issues like applied linguistics itself, where you can discuss issues related to second language acquisition. So we have got a lot of terminology related to second language acquisition. I think this is what you have been learning. If I ask you about terminology in linguistics, it's not enough. But I think the nature of the dictionary you're trying to compile will determine the sort of approach you will be adopting. Okay, and I think so. These are the questions I have.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dean. Okay, so I see the second speaker.
Right. I will react very briefly. Iman, when I said, I agree with you, said you don't accept the use of bilingual dictionaries. And I see the perspective from which you're talking, which is that for some students, they are using bilingual dictionaries as a facilitator to learn English, because mentally they think in Arabic, and then they use the bilingual dictionary to come up with the English text. In that case, Allah, do not use bilingual dictionaries. Use monolingual dictionaries. And I totally agree with you. Right? See, I mean, being cautious means taking time not to check just the word that you are checking, but checking around the word in the text you are working on and in the dictionary you're using. This is a measure of caution. What happens basically is that even with monolingual dictionaries, the student takes the entry and then the first meaning that is offered is the one he adopts or she adopts. Being cautious means taking time. Means calculating what is fit and what is not fit. Means adapting and adopting. This is the kind of caution I'm talking about. I don't say, I mean, it's not a physical caution, take it with caution. No, I mean mental and cognitive, because basically translation is a cognitive operation. I mean, there is an interactivity between you and the text that you are translating, you and the text you are writing. Translation is an act of rewriting. And if writing, I mean the original writing in L1 is defined as a solitary productive endeavor. This is how it is known. Solitary because you're alone, productive because you try to produce, and it is an endeavor because you suffer, you tear out papers, you cross down, and you start all over again. But while you are rewriting, and you are rewriting based on a very different code and on a very different bunch of whimsical considerations that are the author, the time of writing, the genre, and all this stuff. Definitely you have to use dictionary with caution. And that's the kind of caution I'm talking about. Si Fuad, I will quote the Quran. لا تنفذون إلا بسلطان. That's the caution. السلطان هو العلم. يعني ليس من هب ودب يجي يتطفل. تيسي ذاك المنطق ديال خلي نبقاو في السيرفيس ليفل على أن وجه الله هي the face of God ويد الله هي the hand of God وجاء الله والملائكة صفا صفا. No. تيسي ولكن هذا منتوج ديال الراسخين في العلم. في المداخله ديالي شرحت على اساس ان ترجمه القران ما كتطلبش فقط الهرمونوتكس علم التاويل، كتطلب كذلك الاكزيجيزيس، بمعنى ان الانسان خصو يكون ضليع في علم اللغه وفي علم الدين وفي اللغتين. داكور. اذا you said why shouldn't we go beyond. اخويا لا قديتي الله يعاون. To tell you the truth, because it's not an easy venture. من أصعب ما يكون هو الأسلوب القرآني، وربما عنده هذه الميزة، هو ما يوحد اللغة العربية لأنه كلام الله، وهو ما جعل اللغة العربية رغم تشتتها في الواقع تستمر. نحن خلقنا الذكر وإنا له لحافظون. كنقول لك بأن أنا هذا هو النوع ديال التريث اللي تكلمت عليه. يعني خاص ضبط اللغتين، خاص المعرفة الدينية. theological knowledge is necessary. والأغلبية ديال الناس اللي ترجموا القرآن اللغات الأجنبية راه ما ترجموه حتى وصلوا لواحد المستوى ديال الإيمان وفي مستوى معرفي في اللغة العربية، مع العلم على أن أغلبيتهم كانوا قساوسة، يعني كانوا علماء دين theologists، سواء جاوا من اليهودية أو من المسيحية أو من أي شيء، أو لو أنه ما عندوش ديانة راه خدم في الجنوستيسيزم في علم اللاهوت. إذن هذا شيء ما صعب شوية. أنا كنعتذر لأن ربما ترجمة القرآن شي حاجة كبيرة بزاف، ولكن أنا غير بغيت نشير لها لأنها كتبقى في جميع الحالات هي the landmark. That style, that language is the landmark of Arabic language, whether we like it or not. No human can produce such style. No human can be as expressive as the Quran. خاف طاحلة العلماء. يعني تقول بأن مجال خصو قوامه باش الإنسان يمشي له. فاطمة زهراء. اسمح لي فؤاد طولت هذيك. فاطمة زهراء تكلمتي على why should the translator of poetry be a poet. هذا ماشي كلام ديالي. This is one of the views of in literary translation is that the translator of poetry should be a poet. علاش؟ Because poetry has got a very special position among all the other kinds of genre in literature. It's as Wordsworth defines it, it is a powerful overflow of feelings. So it's not just the understanding of the language and the aesthetic of the language and the workings of the language, but as well the emotions of the producer of that language. Lately we had a dissertation that was defended here, and the candidate worked on the translation of Les Fleurs du Mal by Baudelaire in Arabic, in Spanish, and in English. Right? And I guess that it is a kind of venture that took him at least more than 2 decades. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor Murphy. So, Seifa, Professor Sheikh.
Thank you, Si Hisham. I would react to Amin. Amin, you said that I've used the hadith Nabawi, which is كل محدثة ضلالة. I didn't use it as ضلالة at the end. Look, I didn't use that hadith as a research evidence. That was an example, and it shows the resistance of Arabic. I just wanted to say that even when the Arabs wanted to coin, they failed. Why? Because of the sanctity of the language and of the linkage they have between their identity, religion, and the language. So when they wanted to invent a new word, they found, okay, they brought that word, which is haditha or something haditha. They brought it from the hadith of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, which says that at the end, anything which is new, it's not a good thing. Okay, that was the example. And let me give you another example, even from when we were students at high school in Islamic studies. Many of the teachers told us that you cannot use sad or salama, if you still remember salama. They say, okay, don't save time and energy when you want to refer to Rasul. And this is a mistake. This shows a loss of resistance from the Arabic language. And look, the resistance is not the only problem the Arabic language has. But also when we go to the system of vowels and sounds. Okay, always when you have مفعول به, it should be منصوب, فاعل مرفوع. So all this complexity has caused even some people to read Quran not in Arabic, which is the language in which the Quran came. Okay, but they read Quran in French and in English. Why? Because it's not complex. It's not complicated. Okay, that's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Akshmar. Okay, so the last one is Mustafa Jabari.
شكرا على التفاعل الإخوة اللي طرحوا أسئلة بخصوص المداخلة. بخصوص التوصيات الحقيقة الوضع تقتصر على تشخيص الوضع ديال تدريس الترجمة، ولكن بالنسبة للتوصيات هو خرجوا عكس بعض المشاكل العراقية التي نواجهها مثلا في هذا تدريس الترجمة. مثلا تأسيس برامج خاصة بالترجمة أضعف إيمان تحديد أهداف التدريس، لأن مثلا القضية عندنا راه فلوس. على الأقل حددنا غير أهداف راه ربما التدريس غيمشي القادم. بالنسبه للاخ اللي سول على التنسيق بين الطلبه اللغه العربيه والطلبه اللغه الانجليزيه، في الحقيقه الشيء لا يعتبر ليس وحيدا ولا قوه، ربما التنسيق يكون على مستوى الشعراء والاقسام. عندما يكون تنسيق بين الشعراء طبيعي غادي يكون تنسيق بين باقي الطلاب. بخصوص الاحراج او ممكن ما قال الاستاذ البحث، بخصوص المساله انا ركزت على البحث ديال على برج اي نقطه طرف لا اللي وضعت لها تبرير. علاش بحثت في هذه القضيه؟ لان السمستر الثالثه في كل التخصصات سواء الانجليزيه والفرنسيه والالمانيه والاسبانيه عندهم ماده خاصه بالترجمه عن اللغه الاجنبيه الى اللغه العربيه، وعندما نترجم من اللغه الاجنبيه الى اللغه العربيه هنا تصبح ترجمه بيداغوجيه الترجمه وليس الترجمه البيداغوجيه، يعني الترجمه من اجل تدريس اللغات، تعلم اللغات. يعني اذا كانت الدوره الاولى ديال اننا نترجموا العربيه الى اللغه ربما غادي اتفق معك اللغات، ولكن باش من اللغه الاجنبيه الى اللغه العربيه غادي تترجم.
Okay, so thank you so much. Let me reiterate my special thanks to all the speakers in this panel for their great and outstanding and insightful presentations about different issues related to the bilingual dictionaries. And now for the closing ceremony, if you allow me to ask Professor Afkilish and Professor Al-Alawi and also Professor Adwani, the previous speakers, to join the panel for the closing ceremony. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, مرة أخرى أشكر الحضور الكريم, and I would like to close this session. So I would like to thank all the participants, who took part in the two panels, the morning session and the afternoon session. And I'd like to thank our president of Malay Ismail University, who does not cease, to provide assistance to our scientific activities and gatherings. And he apologized. He was about to come this morning, but the heavy schedule we have together, myself and him. Okay, so he could make it. And I'd like to thank Dr. Azdil Bouchekhi from Doha Institute in Qatar. And I think you enjoyed listening to his speech, and I'm sure we'll meet him in the not too distant future, inshallah. Similarly, I would like to thank my colleague, my ex-professor. I would repeat this again, Si Ahmed Alawi. He was really a wonderful teacher. And then he touched my heart when he was my teacher at L'Ines. And Si Tawfiq Kinish, again, we shared the same academic journey. It's like this institution is his institution, and Kenitra is also my institution. I feel more comfortable, perhaps, when I am in Kenitra than in Meknes sometimes. So, thank you once again for accepting to participate in this. Equally important, I would like to thank our colleague from Mohammed Meduni from King Fahd Institute of Translation. I think we met on several occasions, and I think we examined the same candidate, report, Mustafa, and then we're surprised, by his, the quality of his dissertation. Saadin Khalifi, my colleague and my friend in the Department of English, he never stops. It does not stop or reject or deny to my, let's say, requests whenever we call him to participate, and he's really an active member within the department. Mohammed Idris Radwani, exactly the same. So he has been fully active in the department, in the master program, in the PhD program. And I would like to thank the organizing committee for the excellent, wonderful job. Without that committee, the organizing committee, this event could not take place, or wouldn't have taken place. And particularly Si Shamla Abidi, Si Mohamed Yashouti, Zainab Saadullah, and Fatim Zarakrun, Ismail Krouad, Saif Akshmar, Fatima Larouz, and Mehdi Madani, and Munia Mrabti. And we have also a lot of hidden, invisible soldiers who also participated in one way or another to this gathering or event. So, once again, thank you so much, wonderful audience. I always use the term distinguished audience. I like to use the term. And I hope to see you, inshallah, in the not too distant future. And welcome you as prospective teachers, or not prospective students, but prospective teachers. We welcome any suggestion. If you have any suggestion of holding, organizing study days, conferences, national, be it national, international. So your dean is available to your disposal. Can you say that in English?
Yeah.
Disposal?
To your disposal.
Available. In a way, I am available, okay, at any time. So you should take the initiative. I think all my colleagues in the Department of English, they are more than welcome to organize. So they have my full, I would say, support. No support. Oh, green light. Support. So we wish you all the best of luck, and perhaps Professor Alawi may say a few words before you leave.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you very much. So all I can say is thank you for this opportunity for me to come back again to my institution where I started my career. So I'd like to thank Dean Larousse for the kind invitation and all the colleagues who have shared their ideas with us in the morning and the afternoon. And I hope this was beneficial for the prospective teachers and translators. Thank you.
Good evening. There are 70 kilometers are waiting for me to set off for bed. But I'd like to thank you for showing up so numerously, because I see that the room is quite, there is a few empty seats there. This shows as a token of your scientific tendency towards learning, towards knowledge. Thank you once again, and maybe we'll see you once again sooner and shortly. Thank you.
Thanks.
Because I would be like, just like say, thank you very much. I share whatever what my colleagues said about today. I loved it, I liked it, it tired me. It's very hard to keep following the very rich flow of ideas that each presentation was giving us. And I thank Professor Larousse for making it possible, along with the organizing committee. Thank you very much.
Okay, what I want to say is thank you for the audience. It's always a great honor for me to share this panel with my ex-teachers, starting from Mr. Dean, Professor Larousse. I'm always proud to share with him panels and to be a member of his team, of his research team, and doing all the things that would, of course, be in the favor and the advancement of this School of Arts. Also, a big thanks to my ex-teacher, Professor Adwani, my teacher, Professor F. Kinish, and my teacher, Professor Al-Alawi. By the way, his wife, Professor Gina, was my teacher, supervisor in my PhD. And a big thanks to our guests from Agadir. Thank you so much.
سعيد صراحة بالتواجد معكم. بالمناسبة نقلني من واحد من لسان أكادير.
لا سنة واحدة
صح.
هي خيار حرارة. أنا جاي مؤسس من أقاليم صحراوية.
عزم مناسبة فرصة لإحياء العهد ورؤية مجموعة من الوجوه الطيبة سواء من درسنا فيما مضى أو من كنا نقرأ لهم. وسعيد جدا مسية طيبة. شكرا لكم.
Back to you again. It was a hectic but very fruitful day. Thanks to all of you, the participants, the organizing committee, the students. But I have to say something in favor of undergraduate students. Ça fait vraiment chaud au cœur de voir des étudiants de licence présents toute la journée, ce qui veut dire que ce qu'on fait est bien et que la relève est bien assurée. Merci beaucoup à vous.
نشكر الجميع على حضوركم ونلتقي إن شاء الله.